In the vast expanse of a galaxy, where countless civilizations rise and fall like waves upon cosmic shores, there exists a truth that even the mightiest empires fear to acknowledge. Humanity's greatest strength has never been their technology, their numbers, or even their stubborn refusal to surrender. It is something far more dangerous, far more unpredictable. It is love. When Princess Zura of the Velthani Empire agreed to marry a human stranger to save her dying world, she thought she understood the bargain. Her people would gain protection under the human military's umbrella, and she would sacrifice her freedom for their survival. What she didn't expect was to discover that her quiet, seemingly ordinary husband harbored secrets that could reshape the balance of power across seven-star systems. Some say the humans are unremarkable, a young species stumbling through space with more courage than sense. Others whisper that they are sleeping giants, their true nature hidden behind gentle smiles and diplomatic words. Zara was about to learn which version was true, and the galaxy would never be the same. The ceremonial chamber of the Velthani Palace gleamed with dying light. Princess Zara stood before the massive viewport, watching the last transport ships flee her homeworld's surface like frightened birds escaping a storm. Below them, the crystalline cities that had stood for millennia were already beginning to dim as power systems failed one by one. "Your Highness," Chancellor Crix's voice carried the weight of impending doom. "The Skarn fleet will arrive within 72 hours. Our defenses will not hold." Zara didn't turn from the window. She had already memorized every ship in that exodus, every family torn from their ancestral homes because of her father's pride and poor choices. The Velthani had always believed their advanced crystal technology and ancient treaties would protect them. They were wrong. "The human proposal?" she asked, though she already knew the answer would seal her fate. "Commander Marcus Chun has agreed to the terms. A marriage alliance between your houses. In exchange, the Terran Defense Force will establish a permanent protection detail around Velthan Prime." Crix paused, his scaled hands clicking against his datapad nervously. However, the humans have added one condition. This made Zara turn. In 3 days of desperate negotiations, the humans have been remarkably reasonable. Almost too reasonable. "What condition?" "You must relocate to their territory. The marriage must be authentic, not merely a political document." Zara closed her eyes. Of course, the humans were notorious for their emotional attachments to their partnerships. They wouldn't simply accept a paper treaty sealed with empty vows. How long? A minimum of 1 standard year. After that, if both parties agree, you may return to serve as queen under Terran protection. 1 year. 12 months among aliens whose very biology fascinated and terrified the galaxy in equal measure. Humans were death-worlders, evolved from a planet so violent and unforgiving that they had developed physical and psychological traits that made other species uncomfortable. Their strength, their resilience, their disturbing tendency to form emotional bonds with anything that moved, and the capacity for violence when those bonds were threatened. "Tell me about him," Zara said softly. Crix consulted his datapad. "Commander Marcus Chun, 32 standard years. Born on Earth's Asian continent. Engineering background before military service. Currently assigned to the Outer Rim Patrol Fleet. No previous marriages. No criminal record." He hesitated. The psychological profiles indicate he's quiet, thoughtful, not one of the more aggressive human specimens. Zara almost laughed, as if any human could truly be called non-aggressive. But perhaps a quiet one would be easier to endure for a year. His rank, mid-level command. Respectable, but not high enough to carry significant political weight within human military hierarchy. The analysts believe this marriage is as much a burden for him as it is for you. That was oddly comforting. A reluctant groom might be more understanding of a reluctant bride. "When do I meet him?" "He's waiting in the diplomatic suite. The ceremony is scheduled for tomorrow morning, with departure to the human sector immediately following." Zara straightened her shoulders and smoothed the flowing silk of her formal robes. In traditional Velthani culture, marriages were arranged by families for political and genetic compatibility. Love was considered a pleasant bonus, but never a requirement. Perhaps this wouldn't be so different. "Send word that I'll receive him now." The diplomatic suite was smaller than Zara expected, furnished in a neutral style preferred for interspecies meetings. No sharp edges, muted colors, moderate lighting that wouldn't strain alien eyes. Commander Chen stood near the central table, studying a holographic display of the local star system. He was not what she had pictured. Humans were supposed to be large and intimidating. Marcus Chun was certainly tall by Velthani standards, but his build was lean rather than bulky. His dark hair was regulation short, and his uniform crisp but not overly decorated. When he turned to greet her, his brown eyes held an expression she recognized, the careful politeness of someone fulfilling an unwelcome duty. "Your Highness." His bow was precisely correct according to diplomatic protocol. "I'm honored to meet you." "Commander Chun." Zara returned the gesture. "Thank you for agreeing to this arrangement. I understand it wasn't your choice either." Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, perhaps? "My superiors felt I was suitable for the assignment. I agreed because your people need protection. An assignment. That's all this was to him." Somehow that was both reassuring and slightly insulting. "You understand the terms?" "The duration? 1 year minimum. Full marriage according to both our culture's requirements. I'll do my best to make it bearable for you." "Bearable?" Zara studied his face for any sign of deception or hidden agenda. Humans were notoriously difficult to read for other species, their expressions subtle and their true emotions often concealed. But Marcus seemed genuinely resigned to an unwanted situation. "I should warn you," she said carefully, "that Velthani customs are quite different from human ones. We're not physically affectionate outside of specific ceremonial contexts." "I'm not expecting anything beyond what's required for the political arrangement," he replied immediately. "Your quarters will be private. I won't impose on your personal space unless official duties require it." Relief flooded through her. Perhaps this wouldn't be the nightmare she'd imagined. "Thank you. That's considerate." They talked for another hour about practical arrangements. Marcus described the human colony world where they would live, Terra Nova, a peaceful agricultural planet where his family had settled after retirement from military service. The climate was mild, the population sparse, and the local government experienced in handling interspecies residents. "It's quiet," he said with what might have been an apology. "Not much excitement or entertainment by most standards. I hope you won't be too bored." "After recent events, quiet sounds perfect," Zara admitted. When Marcus left, Zara felt something she hadn't experienced in weeks, a tiny spark of hope. Perhaps this human would be as uninteresting as he seemed. Perhaps she could endure a year of boredom in exchange for her people's safety. Perhaps when the time came to return home, they could part as politely as they'd met. She had no way of knowing that Marcus Chun was keeping secrets that would reshape her understanding of everything she thought she knew about humans, about strength, and about the quiet man she was about to marry. The wedding ceremony the next morning was a strange blend of human and Velthani traditions. Zara wore traditional crystal-woven robes that caught the light like captured starfire, while Marcus appeared in his formal military dress uniform. The exchange of vows was brief and formal, promises to respect and protect each other for the duration of their contract. When a human diplomat pronounced them legally bound, Marcus offered his hand. Zara took it, noting the calluses on his palm and the surprising gentleness of his grip. His skin was warm, warmer than Velthani's skin, and she could feel the steady pulse of his heartbeat through their joined hands. "Ready?" he asked quietly. Zara looked one last time at the gathered witnesses. Chancellor Crix, the remaining palace staff, the human diplomatic team. Through the great windows, she could see Terran defense ships already taking positions around her homeworld. The protection was real. Her people would be safe. "Ready," she said. The transport ship that carried them away from Velthan Prime was sleek and efficient, built for speed rather than comfort. Zara spent most of the 3-day journey in her assigned cabin, emerging only for meals shared in awkward silence with her new husband. Marcus seemed content to leave her alone with her thoughts and her grief for the home she was leaving behind. On the 3rd day, they arrived at Terra Nova. The planet was beautiful in an understated way. Rolling green hills, clear blue skies, and settlements that looked grown rather than built. The human aesthetic seemed to favor harmony with natural landscapes over the geometric precision that Velthani preferred. As their shuttle descended toward Marcus's family property, Zara could see forests and farmland stretching to distant mountains. It's peaceful, she observed. My parents chose it for the quiet, Marcus said. After 30 years of military service, they wanted somewhere they could grow things instead of defending them. The house was larger than Zara had expected, but still modest by palace standards. 2 stories of local stone and wood, surrounded by gardens that showed careful tending. As they approached the landing pad, she could see an older couple waiting, Marcus's parents, presumably. The introductions were warmly polite. Thomas and Elizabeth Chun welcomed her with the easy courtesy that seemed to be a human specialty, asking about her comfort during the journey and showing her to rooms that had been prepared with thoughtful attention to Velthani preferences for natural light and mineral-rich water. We know this isn't easy for either of you, Elizabeth said as she showed Zara to her suite. But we hope you'll find some peace here while your people's situation stabilizes. Peace. Zara tested the word in her mind as she unpacked her few belongings. When had she last felt truly peaceful? Before the Skarn threats? Certainly. Before her father's death and her premature ascension to princess heir. Perhaps as far back as childhood. That evening, the family shared dinner on a terrace overlooking the gardens. The conversation was gentle, focused on local topics, and questions about Velthani culture that showed genuine interest rather than mere politeness. Marcus contributed little, but Zara began to understand that this was his nature rather than rudeness. He listened more than he spoke, and when he did comment, his words were thoughtful. How long have you been in the military? Zara asked him during a lull in conversation. 14 years, he replied. Since I was 18. Always in command positions? No, I started as an engineering tech. Worked my way up through the ranks. He paused, seeming to consider his next words. I wasn't born to command like you were born to rule. It's something I learned because it was necessary. There was something in his tone that suggested deeper meaning, but before Zara could pursue it, Elizabeth began telling a story about the local wildlife that drew the conversation in a different direction. Later, as Zara prepared for sleep in her comfortable suite, she reflected on the day. The humans had been kind without being overwhelming, respectful without being distant. Marcus remained an enigma, quiet, competent, but somehow giving the impression of depths beneath his calm surface. Perhaps the year wouldn't be so difficult after all. As long as nothing happened to disturb the peace of Terra Nova, she could learn to appreciate this simpler life. She could use the time to study human culture, maybe even find ways to strengthen the alliance between their species. She fell asleep to the sound of night birds singing in the garden, unaware that less than 100 light years away, a Skarn war fleet was making calculations that would soon shatter the quiet she was already beginning to treasure. In his own room down the hall, Marcus Chun sat by his window, looking out at the stars. He was thinking about duty, about the secrets his superiors had ordered him to keep, and about the intelligent woman he had married who had no idea what she had truly gotten herself into. The peaceful year they both hoped for was about to become something else entirely. 3 weeks in her new life on Terra Nova, Zara had established a routine that brought unexpected comfort. Mornings were spent in the garden with Elizabeth, learning about human agriculture and the delicate balance required to grow earth plants in alien soil. Afternoons found her in the library Thomas had assembled over decades of collecting, diving deep into human history and culture with a scholar's passion. The humans, she was discovering, were far more complex than the simplified profiles provided by Velthani intelligence. Their literature spoke of inner struggles between nobility and brutality. Their history revealed patterns of both devastating warfare and remarkable cooperation. They were contradictions made flesh, capable of breathtaking cruelty and astounding compassion, sometimes within the same individual. Marcus remained the most mysterious part of her new existence. He left early each morning for what he called routine patrol duties, and returned at sunset, tired, but never speaking about his work. During family dinners, he listened to conversations about garden pests and local politics with the same focused attention he might give to military briefings. "You're studying us," he observed one evening as they walked through the moonlit garden after dinner. Zara paused beside a flowering shrub whose blossoms glowed softly in the darkness. "Is that wrong?" "No, just obvious. You watch everything, remember every detail. It's the mark of someone trained to gather intelligence." I was educated to rule, she said carefully. Understanding other cultures was considered essential preparation. Marcus nodded, but there was something in his expression that suggested he saw through her diplomatic answer. What conclusions have you reached about humans so far? The question was casual enough, but Zara sensed genuine curiosity behind it. Perhaps even concern about what she might report back to her people when a year ended. You're more complicated than our briefing suggested, she said honestly. Your species shows remarkable adaptability. You've taken a death world childhood and used those survival skills to thrive in civilized space. But you haven't lost the underlying intensity. It's always there, beneath the politeness. Intensity, the capacity for violence, the protective instincts, the way your pulse changes when you think about threats to things you care about. She glanced at him sideways. Your heartbeat increased when I mentioned our intelligence files on humans. Marcus stopped walking. When he looked at her, his expression was carefully neutral. You can hear my heartbeat. Velthani hearing is more acute than human normal, especially in lower frequency ranges. Zara touched one of her elongated ears self-consciously. I don't mean to eavesdrop on your body functions. It's just automatic. What else do you hear? The question carried odd weight, as if her answer mattered more than casual curiosity would explain. Zara considered lying, then decided honesty might be more valuable than diplomacy. Your breathing changes when you receive communications on that device you think I haven't noticed. Your voice gets slightly deeper when you talk to your parents about local events that shouldn't matter to a military officer. And sometimes at night, you pace your room like someone working through tactical problems. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Around them, the garden hummed with night sounds. Insects, small animals, the whisper of wind through leaves. Finally, he spoke. You're right about humans being complicated. Sometimes we surprise even ourselves. He resumed walking, hands clasped behind his back in a gesture Zara was beginning to recognize as his thinking posture. What does your intelligence service think about our military capabilities? Formidable in certain areas. Human engineering is innovative. Your tactical flexibility is impressive, and your soldiers show remarkable resilience under pressure. But you're a young species. Limited industrial base compared to the old empires. Average technology in most fields. Average, Marcus repeated softly. Why? Are those assessments wrong? Let's say they're incomplete. Before Zara could ask what he meant, her personal communicator chimed with an urgent message indicator. The device was a gift from Chancellor Crix, designed to keep her informed about developments on Velthan Prime. She hadn't received any messages since arriving on Terra Nova. The message was brief and terrifying. Skarn probe ships detected in outer system. Defense fleet moving to intercept. Situation developing. Marcus must have seen her expression change because he stepped closer immediately. What is it? The Skarn. Zara's hands were shaking as she showed him the message. They're testing Velthan defenses. Probing for weaknesses. Marcus read the message, his own expression growing grim. When was this sent? 2 hours ago. Marcus, if they find a way through the Terran defense perimeter, they won't. The certainty in his voice was absolute. You can't know that. The Skarn have broken through stronger defensive lines. Their technology is specifically designed to counter most galactic military systems. That's how they've conquered 8 systems in 5 years. Marcus was already activating his own communicator, speaking in rapid human military code that Zara couldn't follow. Whatever response he received made his shoulders relax slightly. Your people are safe, he said. The probe was neutralized before it could complete its scan. How can you be sure? Because I just confirmed it with Fleet Command. Zara stared at him. Your patrol duties. You're not just stationed here, are you? You're monitoring the situation. Among other things. What other things? Marcus looked at her for a moment, seeming to weigh his answer carefully. I think it's time you understood what you've really married into. They walked back to the house in thoughtful silence. Marcus led her to his father's study, a comfortable room lined with books and star charts. Thomas looked up from his reading chair as they entered. The Skarn probe? He asked immediately. Marcus nodded. Handled. But Zara has questions. Thomas closed his book and gestured for them to sit. I imagine she does. We probably should have explained earlier. Explain what? Zara demanded. Thomas and Marcus exchanged a look that spoke of long understanding. Finally, Thomas began. My son told you I served 30 years in the military. That's true, but it doesn't capture the whole story. I was part of the team that designed humanity's current defense doctrine, the philosophy that guides how we approach threats to human space and our allies. What philosophy? Graduated response. Marcus said quietly. Most species develop military technology in linear fashion. Better weapons, stronger shields, faster ships. Humans took a different approach. Thomas nodded. We assumed that eventually we'd face enemies with superior technology. So we developed systems specifically designed to work against more advanced opponents. Zara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. What kind of systems? The kind that make probe ships disappear without transmitting their findings, Marcus said. The kind that can neutralize threats before they realize they're being targeted. Your intelligence reports are based on what we allow other species to observe, Thomas continued. Our actual capabilities are considerably more extensive than anyone suspects. How extensive? Marcus was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of classified knowledge. The Skarn fleet that conquered 8 systems? We've been tracking their movements for 3 years. Every ship, every weapon system, every tactical doctrine. If they move against Velfen Prime, they'll discover that the quiet farming family you've been living with is connected to a military infrastructure that most of the galaxy has never imagined. Zara's mind raced through implications. You're saying humans have been hiding your true strength? Not hiding, Thomas corrected. Simply not advertising. There's a difference between deception and discretion. Why tell me now? Marcus leaned forward, his expression serious. Because tomorrow, you're going to witness something that will change how you think about human capabilities. The Skarn just escalated beyond probes. According to our intelligence, they're moving a full battle fleet toward your system. Tomorrow, Zara's voice was barely above a whisper. My real assignment isn't patrol duty, Marcus admitted. I'm field commander for a new class of human warship. We've been waiting for an opportunity to test it under combat conditions. One ship against a Skarn battle fleet? The look that passed between Marcus and his father was almost predatory. For the first time since meeting them, Zara caught a glimpse of the underlying nature Elizabeth had mentioned during her first night here. Humans were predators. Apex predators from a world that had tried to kill them for millions of years. And they had learned to kill back. Not one ship, Marcus said softly. One ship is all we'll need. That night, Zara lay awake thinking about everything she thought she knew about her situation. She had married human commander to protect her people, assuming it meant accepting the protection of a competent but unremarkable military officer. Instead, she was beginning to realize she had somehow become connected to whatever humanity's true military strength looked like. The quiet man sleeping down the hall wasn't what he seemed. His parents weren't simple retired farmers. And the peaceful colony world she had thought would be her exile might actually be something much more important. In the darkness, she could hear Marcus moving around his room, but the sounds weren't random pacing. They were too purposeful, too organized. He was preparing for something. Dawn came with unusual activity. Military transports began landing in the fields around the Chin property, disgorging personnel and equipment with practiced efficiency. Elizabeth served breakfast as if armed soldiers setting up command posts in her garden was perfectly normal. How long have you known? Zara asked her. About Marcus's real duties? Since he was assigned here 6 months ago. We've been through this before, dear. Military families learn to adapt. This has happened before. Thomas smiled grimly as he joined them at the breakfast table. Marcus isn't our only child in specialized military service. Humans take the protection of our allies very seriously. Through the window, Zara could see Marcus in animated discussion with officers whose uniforms bore insignia she didn't recognize. His posture was different now, straighter, more commanding. The quiet engineer was gone, replaced by someone who clearly held significant authority. He noticed her watching and approached the house. When he entered the kitchen, he was carrying a sealed communication device. Zara, he said formally, I need you to authorize emergency protocols for Velfen Prime's defense grid. What kind of protocols? Integration with human command systems. It will allow our ships to coordinate directly with your remaining defense platforms. Zara hesitated. That level of integration would give you complete access to our military infrastructure. Yes. Why should I trust you with that? Marcus met her eyes steadily. Because in approximately 6 hours, the Skarn are going to attack your homeworld with everything they have. And if you don't trust me now, a lot of people are going to die. Outside, she could hear the whine of more ships arriving, the controlled bustle of a major military operation spinning up to full readiness. The peaceful farming community was revealing itself as something else entirely. A carefully constructed cover for whatever humanity really was beneath their diplomatic smiles. Zara looked at the authorization pad Marcus held, then at the man she had married to save her people. Whatever came next would change everything. For her people, and possibly for the balance of power in this sector of the galaxy. She pressed her palm to the authorization scanner and watched Marcus's expression transform into something that was no longer entirely human. "Thank you," he said. Then, speaking into his communicator, "Command, this is Cerberus Actual. Full authorization confirmed. Begin deployment." Through the kitchen window, Zara watched something vast begin to rise from what she had thought was empty ground. The morning sky darkened as it climbed towards space, and she realized that her quiet year of exile was about to become something else entirely. The ship that emerged from beneath Terra Nova's surface defied everything Zara thought she understood about human technology. It was massive, easily 3 times the size of a standard Velthani cruiser, but its design was unlike anything in her xenology training. Where most vessels displayed the clean lines and efficient geometry favored by advanced civilizations, this craft seemed almost organic in its curves and flowing surfaces. Designation is HFY Cerberus, Marcus explained as they watched it climb through the atmosphere from his family's garden. Experimental class. We've been field testing it for 8 months. It was buried under your property. Zara couldn't hide her amazement. Thomas chuckled from behind them. Not buried. Grown. Elizabeth joined them with coffee, apparently unfazed by the fact that a warship was launching from her backyard. Humans have developed some interesting approaches to manufacturing. Biological engineering isn't just for medical applications. You're saying that ship is alive? Partially, Marcus corrected. Biomechanical hybrid. The advantages are significant. Self-repair capabilities, adaptive armor that responds to incoming threats, weapon systems that can evolve tactics in real time. Zara watched the massive vessel disappear into the blue-black of upper atmosphere. How many people know about this? Outside of human space? Very few. We prefer to let other species make their own assumptions about our capabilities. The implications hit her like a physical blow. The protection you offer my people. It wasn't just diplomatic alliance. You've been preparing for a Skarn invasion. Marcus nodded grimly. The Skarn expansion pattern was predictable. They always follow the same strategy. Identify isolated systems with valuable resources, probe for weaknesses, then overwhelm defenses with superior numbers and technology. Velthan Prime was an obvious target, so you arranged this marriage to position yourself as field commander when they attacked. No. Marcus's voice carried unexpected emotion. The marriage alliance was genuine. But, yes, I volunteered for this assignment because I knew what was coming. Zara studied his face, tried to read the complex emotions there. You used me. We protected you. And, through you, your people. The methods may have been indirect, but the commitment is real. Before Zara could respond, Marcus's communicator crackled with urgent transmissions. His expression grew focused as he listened to rapid-fire reports in military code. Status, he asked tersely. Skarn Battle Group consists of 47 vessels, came the response. Standard configuration, 12 heavy assault ships, 28 destroyers, 7 support craft. They'll reach Velthan Prime in 4 hours. Velthani defense status? 18 platforms operational, 6 fighter squadrons. They're requesting permission to evacuate remaining civilians. Marcus looked at Zara. Your call. Do your people fight or flee? The question contained layers of meaning. Zara understood that he was asking whether she trusted human promises enough to risk Velthani lives. Whether she believed this strange hybrid warship could accomplish what seemed impossible. They fight, she said quietly. My people have never fled from an enemy. Good. Marcus activated his own transmitter. Cerberus command, this is actual. Velthani forces will maintain defensive positions, coordinate targeting solutions, and prepare for full engagement. Sir, Estimated time to contact? 3 hours, 47 minutes. I want complete tactical analysis by the time we reach the system. As the conversation continued with technical details Zara couldn't follow, she found herself studying her husband with new eyes. The quiet engineer was gone completely now, replaced by someone who spoke with absolute authority and whose orders were followed without question. This was Marcus Chen's true nature, not a mid-level commander accepting an unwanted assignment, but someone with access to humanity's most advanced military technology. "How long have you been lying to me?" she asked when he finished his communications. Marcus considered the question seriously. "About my rank and specific duties? Since we met. About my intentions toward you and your people? Never. That's a fine distinction. It's an important one. Everything I told you about wanting to make this bearable, about respecting your space, about helping your people survive, all of that was true. I just couldn't tell you how we planned to ensure their survival." Thomas approached them carrying a tablet, displaying tactical information. Skarn fleet composition confirmed. They're bringing everything they used to break the Theshan defense line. The Theshans had 50 ships, Zara said numbly. One of the most advanced fleets in the sector. The Skarn destroyed them in less than 6 hours. The Theshans fought conventionally, Marcus replied. Ship to ship, formation against formation. They played by rules the Skarn had already learned to exploit. And humans fight differently. The smile that crossed Marcus's face was predatory. Humans fight to win. The next few hours passed in controlled chaos as the Chun property transformed into a military command center. Officers arrived hourly with updates and equipment, turning the peaceful farmhouse into the nerve center of an operation Zara was only beginning to understand. She spent the time learning about human military philosophy from Thomas, while Elizabeth calmly prepared lunch for an ever-expanding group of personnel. The older man was surprisingly willing to discuss concepts that should have been highly classified. Most species develop military technology by improving existing concepts, he explained as they watched tactical displays being assembled in what had been a living room. Better shields, stronger weapons, faster engines. Linear progression. That makes sense, Zara said. Build on proven foundations. But what happens when you encounter an enemy whose technology is fundamentally superior? All your improvements become irrelevant. Thomas called up historical data on the tablet. Humans learned early that we couldn't compete with established galactic powers in traditional ways. Our industrial base was too small, our technology too primitive. So we developed entirely different approaches. The display showed comparative analyses between human military equipment and that of other species. In conventional categories, firepower, shield strength, speed, human technology appeared unremarkable. But there were other categories listed that Zara didn't recognize. Adaptive response capability, she asked. The ability to modify tactics in real time based on enemy behavior. Most species design their ships and weapons for specific purposes. Human systems are designed to learn and evolve during combat. Integration potential. How effectively our technology can interface with and enhance allied systems. When we protect a world, we don't just add our ships to their defenses. We make their entire defensive grid more effective. Zara began to understand. You turn allies into extensions of human military capability. We share our adaptive advantages with species that trust us enough to accept full integration. The result is defensive systems that become stronger the longer they're engaged. And the Skarn don't know this? Thomas smiled grimly. The Skarn know what they've observed. Humans losing fights against superior numbers, retreating from systems they couldn't hold, negotiating treaties instead of fighting wars. What they don't know is that we've been gathering intelligence on their tactics, while we appear to be losing. A communications technician approached them. Sir, Cerberus reports ready for jump to combat zone. Marcus appeared from the command center that had been assembled in the dining room. He had changed into military dress that Zara hadn't seen before. Dark fabric that seemed to absorb light, with insignia that suggested far higher rank than she'd been told. I need to be on the ship for the engagement, he told her. You're welcome to observe from here, or you can come with me. See firsthand how humans protect their allies. Zara looked around the transformed farmhouse, at the efficient activity of personnel preparing for battle, at the casual confidence displayed by everyone involved. These people weren't worried about fighting a superior force. They were eager to test their capabilities against a worthy opponent. Is it safe? Marcus's expression grew serious. For you? Absolutely. The ship is designed to protect its crew and passengers under any conceivable combat conditions. For the Skarn, he shrugged. That depends on whether they're smart enough to withdraw when they realize what they're facing. And if they're not smart enough, then your people will never have to worry about Skarn raids again. The journey to orbit took place in a transport that was as advanced as everything else Zara had seen. The acceleration was smooth despite the massive G-forces involved, and the cabin provided real-time displays of their approach to the HSN Cerberus. Up close, the ship was even more impressive than it had appeared from the ground. The hull seemed to shift and flow subtly, as if the metal was alive. Weapon ports opened and closed in organic patterns, and sensor arrays moved like eyes tracking potential threats. How big is the crew? Zara asked as they docked. 47 people, Marcus replied. The ship handles most functions autonomously. 47 people to operate a vessel this size? The biomechanical systems don't require traditional crew complements. Most of the interior space is devoted to manufacturing facilities, medical bays, and passenger accommodations. They were met at the airlock by officers who greeted Marcus with respect due to someone of very high rank indeed. The ship's interior was as strange as its exterior, corridors that curved without apparent reason, walls that seemed to pulse gently, and a pervasive sense of being inside something alive. The bridge was a circular chamber dominated by a central command chair, surrounded by displays showing tactical information. As they entered, crew members were reporting readiness status for systems Zara didn't recognize. Biological integration at 97%. Adaptive armor responding within normal parameters. Weapon systems ready for evolutionary targeting. Marcus took his position in the command chair, and suddenly, he seemed to become part of the ship itself. Information flowed to him from sources Zara couldn't identify, and his responses were translated instantly into ship commands. Plot course for Velthan Prime, he ordered. Full tactical stealth until we're in position. Sir, Skarn fleet will arrive in 1 hour, 40 minutes. Plenty of time. Patch me through to Velthani Defense Command. The main display activated to show Chancellor Crix in the Planetary Defense Center. He looked haggard and desperate, clearly expecting this to be a final conversation. Princess Zura, he said with visible relief. You're safe. Chancellor, Commander Chun is coordinating our defense. Give him full access to all defensive systems. Crix looked uncertain. Your Highness, the human commander is requesting integration protocols we've never shared with any alien species. Do it, Zara said firmly. Trust me. The integration process was visible on the bridge displays as Velthani defense platforms began linking with Cerberus systems. What had been 18 separate defensive units became components of a larger network centered on the human ship. Integration complete, reported the tactical officer. Velthani defensive capability improved by approximately 300%. How is that possible? Zara asked. Marcus gestured to the displays showing energy flow patterns. Your people built excellent defensive platforms, but they were designed to operate independently. By linking them through our systems, they can coordinate targeting, share power distribution, and focus their fire with perfect timing. In effect, added the tactical officer, we've turned your entire defensive grid into a single, massive weapon system. On the long-range sensors, contact markers appeared at the edge of the system. 47 Skarn vessels, approaching in the standard formation that had overwhelmed 8 worlds before this one. Enemy fleet detected, came the report. Standard assault configuration. They're following predicted attack patterns. Marcus's expression grew focused. Perfect. Let them get close enough to commit to the attack. Then, show them what happens when humans fight for something they care about. Zara realized she was about to witness the true face of human warfare, not the diplomatic restraint or careful negotiations that most species associated with humanity, but the underlying nature of a species that had evolved to survive on a world that constantly tried to kill them. The Skarn were about to learn what apex predators looked like when something they valued was threatened. Time of contact, Marcus asked. 17 minutes, sir. Good. Begin biological systems activation. Full combat mode. Around them, the ship began to change in ways that made Zara's skin crawl. The walls seemed to breathe more rapidly. Displays showed internal processes that looked disturbingly organic, and there was a sense of awakening that suggested the vessel was becoming something far more dangerous than mere technology. "Sir," the communications officer reported, "Skarn Fleet is transmitting surrender demands to Velthin Prime." Marcus smiled, and for the first time since she'd known him, Zara saw something in his expression that was genuinely frightening. "Open a channel," he ordered. "Let's introduce ourselves." The Skarn Fleet approached Velthin Prime in perfect formation, their ships arranged in the precise patterns that had terrorized 8-star systems. Admiral HFY observed the target planet from the command deck of his flagship, studying the defensive positions with practiced eyes. 18 defensive platforms and a handful of fighters, pathetic resistance for a world that should have learned wisdom from watching its neighbors fall. "Broadcast surrender demands," he ordered. "Standard occupation terms." The response came from an unexpected source. Not the planetary government as anticipated, but from a ship that hadn't existed on their sensors moments before. It materialized between the Skarn Fleet and Velthin Prime like something conjured from vacuum itself. "Skarn vessels," came the transmission in perfect galactic standard. "This is Commander Marcus Chun of the Terran Defense Force. You are ordered to withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Admiral HFY studied the tactical display with growing amusement. A single ship, large, certainly, but alone against 47 vessels. Human arrogance was apparently as limitless as their stupidity. "Human commander," he replied, "you appear to be lost. This system is under Skarn authority as of today. Withdraw your vessel, and we will pretend this embarrassment never occurred." The response carried undertones that made the Skarn admiral's skin crawl. The human voice held no fear, no uncertainty, only cold determination. "Admiral, I believe you misunderstood. I wasn't making a request." On the bridge of HSN Cerberus, Zara watched tactical displays that showed the Skarn fleet closing rapidly on their position. The enemy ships were massive and predatory, their hulls bristling with weapons that had shattered planetary defenses across the sector. Against them, a single human vessel and the enhanced Velthani platforms that still seemed pathetically inadequate. "Marcus," she said quietly, "are you certain about this?" Her husband's attention was focused on data streams that flowed across multiple displays. His hands moved over controls that seemed to respond to his thoughts rather than his touch. "The Skarn have excellent conventional tactics," he replied without looking away from his instruments. "Their success comes from superior firepower applied through proven strategies. Unfortunately for them, we don't fight conventionally." "What do you fight with?" Marcus smiled, and the expression held none of the gentle consideration she'd grown accustomed to over the past weeks. This was something else entirely, focused, predatory, completely without mercy. "Physics," he said, "and the fact that humans have spent 300 years learning to kill things that are bigger, stronger, and better armed than we are." On the tactical display, the Skarn fleet began to spread into attack formation. Admiral HFY was following the exact pattern that had worked against the Thessians, the Mordani, and 6 other systems. Surround the defensive positions, overwhelm them with concentrated firepower, then land occupation forces. "Enemy fleet moving to encirclement positions," reported the tactical officer. "Let them," Marcus replied. "Full stealth mode until they commit to the attack." The Cerberus seemed to fade from Skarn sensors, leaving only the Velthani defensive platforms visible. Admiral HFY nodded with satisfaction as his fleet completed the maneuver that had never failed him. "All ships, commence bombardment. Focus fire on the defensive platforms." The attack began with the devastating firepower that had shattered worlds. 47 warships opened fire simultaneously, directing massive energy beams and kinetic projectiles at the Velthani positions, and achieved absolutely nothing. The beams that should have vaporized the defensive platforms instead splashed harmlessly against barrier fields that shifted and flowed like liquid energy. Kinetic rounds that should have shattered hulls were absorbed by shields that seemed to grow stronger under attack. "What is happening?" Admiral HFY demanded. His tactical officer studied readings that made no sense. Sir, the defensive platforms are linked through some kind of network. They're sharing power distribution and coordinating their defensive fields. It's like attacking a single massive fortress instead of separate targets. Admiral THYSS Ka had never encountered adaptive defenses, but he was an experienced commander. Concentrate fire. All ships target the largest platform. Overwhelming force applied to a single point. The Skarn fleet focused its combined firepower on one defensive station. For a moment, it seemed the strategy might work as the targeted platform shields flickered under the massive assault. Then, Marcus decided the demonstration had gone on long enough. Cerberus, drop stealth. All weapons free. Time to show our guests why humans are considered dangerous. The ship that materialized in the center of the Skarn formation was no longer the vessel Zara had observed from Terra Nova. The hull had transformed into something that seemed alive, its surface rippling with patterns that hurt to look at directly. Weapon ports opened like mouths along its length, and the energy readings coming from its core were beyond anything in Skarn experience. New contact, the Skarn tactical officer screamed. Massive energy signature directly among our ships. Admiral THYSS Ka stared at the readings. The human vessel was showing power levels that exceeded his entire fleet combined. That was impossible. No single ship could generate that much energy. All ships target the human vessel. Maximum firepower. The response was immediate and devastating for the Skarn. As their weapons fired, the Cerberus simply absorbed the energy, channeling it through systems that converted incoming fire into additional power for its own weapons. Then it began to shoot back. The first Skarn destroyer simply ceased to exist, vaporized by a beam that seemed to cut through space itself. The second managed to raise shields before being struck by projectiles that phased through energy barriers as if they weren't there. The third ship began to retreat before discovering that its engines had been disabled by weapons that rewrote its control systems at the molecular level. Impossible, Admiral THYSS Ka whispered. Sir, we're being targeted by the human ship. Evasive maneuvers. The Admiral watched 3 more of his vessels disappear from the tactical display. Whatever weapons the humans were using, they didn't function according to known physics. Energy beams that curved to follow targets, projectiles that materialized inside enemy hulls, defensive systems that grew stronger under attack. All ships, full retreat. Emergency jump to hyperspace. But the Cerberus had anticipated that response. As the Skarn ships tried to disengage, they discovered that local space had been altered around them. Hyperspace entry points were being redirected, navigation systems were providing false readings, and their own ships were responding to external commands. On the bridge of the Cerberus, Zara watched in fascination and horror as the human ship systematically dismantled the force that had terrorized 8 worlds. It wasn't a battle in any traditional sense. It was a demonstration of technological superiority so complete that resistance was meaningless. How are you doing this? She asked. Marcus gestured to the displays showing real-time analysis of Skarn ship systems. We've been studying their technology for 3 years. Every vessel they've built, every weapon they've used, every tactical decision they've made. We know their capabilities better than they do. But those weapons, they're not following normal physics. They're following human physics. We learned early that direct confrontation with superior technology is futile. So we developed indirect approaches. Weapons that alter local space-time to redirect energy, projectiles that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, defensive systems that convert incoming attacks into useful resources. Another Skarn ship vanished from the display, its hull consumed by nanomachines that the Cerberus had introduced into its atmosphere. The crew would survive. Humans, Zara was learning, were remarkably precise in their violence, but the ship would never function again. Admiral THYSS Ka, Marcus said, opening communications to the Skarn flagship. Do I have your attention now? The response was filled with rage and bewilderment. What are you? We're humans. We're the species you've been ignoring while you conquered our neighbors. We're the people who form alliances instead of empires, who prefer cooperation to conquest. Marcus's voice grew deadly calm. We're also the species that evolved on a world that tried to kill us every single day for 4 million years. Your weapons, they violate galactic warfare conventions. Our weapons follow human warfare conventions. The only rule that matters is protecting the people we care about. Admiral Siska watched helplessly as more of his ships were systematically disabled. The human vessel moved through his formation like a predator among prey, its weapons adapting to each new defensive measure his ships attempted. "What do you want?" he finally asked. "I want you to remember this moment," Marcus replied. "I want you to remember what happened when you threatened something humans value. I want you to carry that memory back to whoever sent you and make sure they understand the real cost of threatening our allies. You're letting us go? I'm letting most of you go. Enough to spread the word about what happens when someone attacks human protectorates. The others will remain as evidence that our protection agreements have teeth." Of the 47 ships that had approached Velthan Prime, 23 were allowed to retreat with disabled weapons and damaged engines that would take months to repair. The remaining vessels were systematically dismantled, their crews evacuated to the surviving ships before their vessels were reduced to component elements. The entire engagement lasted 47 minutes. As the surviving Skarn ships limped away toward their own territory, Zara found herself looking at her husband with completely different eyes. The quiet engineer she had married was gone, replaced by someone who commanded technology that redefined the possible. "Is this what humans really are?" she asked quietly. Marcus considered the question seriously. "This is what humans become when something we protect is threatened. Most of the time, we prefer building to fighting, cooperation to conquest. But when someone threatens our allies, our family, our people," he gestured to the tactical display showing the aftermath of the battle. "This is what we're capable of. And the other species don't know. The other species see what we choose to show them. Diplomatic humans, reasonable humans, humans who prefer negotiation to warfare. They don't see the weapons we build or the preparations we make because we hope never to need them." Zara watched as Cerberus began coordinating repair efforts with the Velthani defense platforms. The integrated systems that had seemed so powerful during the battle were now being turned to construction and healing, converting the same technologies that had devastated the Skarn fleet into tools for rebuilding and improvement. "The Velthani platforms," she observed. "They're being upgraded. Enhanced." Marcus corrected. "Your people built excellent defensive systems. We're just helping them reach their full potential. When we leave, Velthan Prime will have defenses that could stand against anything the Skarn bring back. When we leave," Marcus turned to look at her directly. "Our agreement was for 1 year minimum. The immediate threat is over. Your people are safe. If you want to return home and resume your duties as Princess Heir, I'll arrange transport." There was no pressure in his voice, no attempt to influence her decision. He was offering her exactly what she had hoped for when this arrangement began. The chance to go home with her people safe and her obligations fulfilled. So why did the thought of leaving fill her with unexpected reluctance? "And if I stayed longer?" she asked carefully. Something shifted in Marcus's expression. Hope, perhaps, or relief that she was even considering the option. "Then, you'd learn more about what humans are really like when we're not preparing for war. You'd see the other side of our nature, the part that builds instead of destroys, that explores instead of conquers." Zara looked around the bridge of the ship that had just redefined her understanding of human capabilities. These people had hidden their true strength to avoid frightening potential allies, had developed weapons beyond imagination to protect worlds they'd never even visited, had created technologies that turned the galaxy's understanding of physics inside out. And they had done it all while maintaining the gentle courtesy and genuine care that had made her time on Terra Nova unexpectedly pleasant. "I think," she said slowly, "that I'd like to understand humans better. All of humanity, not just the parts they show to other species." Marcus smiled, and for the first time in hours, it was the gentle expression she remembered from quiet evenings in his family's garden. "In that case," he said, "let me show you what humans build when we're not worried about someone trying to destroy it." The tactical displays shifted to show construction projects throughout human space. Cities that grew like living things, ships that explored the spaces between galaxies, research facilities that pushed the boundaries of knowledge in directions other species had never imagined. Zara realized that witnessing the battle had been only the beginning of her education about humanity. She had seen what they could destroy when threatened. Now she would learn what they created when they felt safe enough to dream. The year she had expected to be in exile was becoming something else entirely, a chance to understand the species that had just redefined the balance of power in her sector of the galaxy. And perhaps, in the process, to discover what it meant to be married to a man who could command such forces and still choose to grow flowers in his family's garden. 6 months after the battle at Velthan Prime, Princess Zara stood in the observation deck of the HSN Cerberus watching human engineers work alongside Velthani technicians to complete the new orbital research station. The sight still amazed her. Two species with completely different technological philosophies collaborating to create something neither could have built alone. The station was a marvel of integrated design. Velthani crystal growth techniques had been combined with human biomechanical systems to create structures that were both beautiful and functional. Gardens floated in zero gravity alongside laboratories where scientists from both species worked to unlock the secrets of technologies that had seemed impossible just months before. The quantum resonance chambers are online, reported Chief Engineer Morrison from her position near the main display. Velthani crystal matrices are interfacing perfectly with our biological systems. Marcus nodded from his command position. How long until full operational status? Another 6 hours for final calibration. After that, we'll have research capabilities that neither species has ever achieved independently. Zara smiled as she listened to the casual efficiency of the human crew. In the months since she'd chosen to remain with Marcus, she had learned to read the subtle signs of their satisfaction with a job well done. Humans, she had discovered, took deep pleasure in solving complex problems and creating things that helped others. The Velthani Council is sending representatives to observe the first tests, she told Marcus as he joined her at the observation deck. Nervous? He asked. Excited. Your people have shown mine possibilities we never imagined. Crystal technology that can grow and adapt, defensive systems that become stronger through cooperation, research methods that combine logic and intuition. Zara paused, watching a group of human and Velthani children play together in the station's recreational area. We've learned so much from each other, including some things neither of us expected. There was something in Marcus's tone that made Zara look at him more carefully. Over the months, she had become expert at reading his expressions, understanding the subtle shifts that indicated his thoughts and moods. What's on your mind? Marcus gestured toward the tactical display that showed the broader region around Velthan Prime. Intelligence reports indicate the Skarn Empire is undergoing significant changes. The survivors of Admiral Tifisiska's fleet have been spreading word about human capabilities. Is that good or bad? Both. Other aggressive species are being much more cautious about expansion plans. That's good for everybody. But some of the older powers are asking questions about human military technology. Zara understood immediately. They want to know if you're a threat to them. They want to know if we have territorial ambitions that might conflict with theirs. The balance of power has shifted, and everyone is reassessing their strategic positions. Do you have territorial ambitions? Marcus was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. Humans have expansion goals, but not the kind that worry our neighbors. We want to explore, to learn, to find new places where we can build communities. We're not interested in conquering established civilizations, but you're interested in protecting them if they ask for help. Yes, and that's causing some interesting political developments. Before Zara could ask what he meant, her personal communicator chimed with a priority message from Chancellor Crix. She read the transmission with growing amazement. Marcus, you need to see this. The message was brief, but momentous. Formal petition received from Theshan Republic requesting protection alliance similar to Velthan Prime Agreement. Similar requests pending from 4 additional systems. Galactic Council calling emergency session to discuss human expansion policies. Marcus read the message with an expression of mixed satisfaction and concern. It's beginning. What's beginning? The fundamental shift in galactic politics that Command has been anticipating. Species that have been neutral or isolated are now actively seeking human protection. The old balance between aggressive empires and defensive alliances is changing. Zara studied the implications. The Thessians were conquered by the Skarn. How are they requesting anything? The Theshan Republic was re-established 3 weeks ago when the Skarn occupation forces withdrew from their system. Apparently, Admiral Tifisiska's reports about human capabilities were convincing enough to make the Empire reconsider which territories were worth holding. They just left. When maintaining an occupation requires more resources than it generates, empires tend to cut their losses. The Skarn realized that holding worlds under human protection would cost more than those worlds were worth. The personal implications hit Zara suddenly. Marcus, if multiple species are requesting protection alliances, that means more marriages like ours. More human officers taking assignments as liaison commanders with alien spouses. More integration of defensive systems and technologies. More couples dealing with the same cultural adjustments we've been working through. Marcus nodded. Command is using our relationship as a template for future alliances. They want to understand what works, what doesn't, and how to structure agreements that benefit everyone involved. Zara felt a strange mixture of pride and pressure. Their marriage had begun as a desperate political arrangement, but it was becoming something that might influence the future of interspecies relations across the sector. "Are we a good template?" she asked quietly. Marcus turned to face her directly, his expression serious. "I think that depends on whether we've achieved something beyond political convenience." The question hung between them like a challenge. In the months since the battle, they had grown comfortable with each other, learned to appreciate each other's perspectives, developed the kind of partnership that made both their lives easier. But neither had directly addressed the deeper question of whether their relationship had become something more than a successful diplomatic arrangement. "I've been thinking about that," Zara said carefully, "about what we've built together. And what conclusion have you reached?" "I've concluded that I don't want to find out what my life would be like without you in it." The words were simple, but they carried weight that both of them understood. This wasn't a declaration of passionate romance, but something deeper and more valuable, mutual respect that had grown into genuine affection and partnership. Marcus smiled, and Zara realized it was an expression she had learned to treasure. "I've been thinking the same thing. Whatever we call this relationship, it's become real. Real enough that the political aspects don't matter anymore. Real enough that I want to build a life with you, regardless of what our governments need from us." Before either could say more, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Not combat alerts. Zara had learned to recognize those, but the signals that indicated incoming urgent communications. "Bridge to Commander Chun," came the voice of the communications officer. "Priority message from Terran Command. Eyes-only classification." Marcus sighed. "Duty calls. Want to listen in?" Zara nodded, and they made their way to the secure communications center. The message that appeared on screen carried the highest level of military encryption, indicating information that could affect interstellar policy. "Commander Chun," said the admiral whose image appeared on screen, "the Galactic Council has formally requested a meeting with senior human military leadership. They want to discuss the establishment of formal protection treaties with multiple species simultaneously." "How many species?" Marcus asked. 14 confirmed requests, with more expected. This would essentially establish humanity as a major galactic power with defense responsibilities spanning 7 sectors. Zara felt her breath catch. 14 species seeking human protection meant a fundamental realignment of galactic politics. Humanity was being asked to step into a role traditionally held by ancient empires. "What's the Council's position?" Marcus continued. "They're nervous. A young species suddenly demonstrating advanced military capabilities and attracting multiple alliance requests makes everyone reassess their strategic assumptions. They want guarantees that human expansion won't threaten existing territorial agreements." And Terran Command's response? "We're accepting the meeting request. However, we want our most successful alliance partnerships represented in the discussions. Your relationship with Princess Zara has become the model for how these arrangements can work." Marcus and Zara exchanged glances. They were being asked to represent not just their own relationship, but the future of human-alien cooperation to the most powerful political body in the galaxy. "Sir," Marcus said carefully, "Princess Zara and I have developed a personal relationship that goes beyond political requirements. Our perspective might not be entirely objective." The Admiral's expression grew thoughtful. "Commander, the fact that you've built something genuine is exactly why Command wants you involved. Political marriages that become real partnerships demonstrate that these alliances can create lasting bonds between species." "When is this meeting?" Zara asked. 3 weeks. Galactic Council chambers on Nexus Station. Both of you will be expected to speak about the practical aspects of interspecies cooperation. After the communication ended, Marcus and Zara sat in thoughtful silence. The peaceful life they had been building was about to be thrust into the center of galactic politics. "Are you ready for this?" Marcus asked. "To represent our relationship to the most powerful beings in the galaxy? To help establish policies that will affect billions of people? To become a symbol of interspecies cooperation?" Zara smiled wryly. "No, but I'm willing to try. It won't be easy. There will be species that see humanity as a threat, others that think our technology gives us unfair advantages, political factions that benefit from the current balance of power. And there will be people like us who've learned that cooperation creates possibilities neither species could achieve alone." Zara reached for Marcus's hand, noting how natural the gesture had become. "We'll tell them the truth about what we've built." "Which truth? That arranged marriages can work? That humans and aliens can cooperate successfully? That love can develop even in political situations?" "All of those truths, but especially the most important one." "Which is?" Zara smiled, thinking about everything they had experienced together. The initial awkwardness, the revelation of human military power, the battle that redefined galactic politics, the slow growth of trust and affection that had surprised them both. That sometimes the best things in life come from decisions we make to protect the people we care about. "I married you to save my people. You accepted the assignment to defend worlds you'd never seen. But what we built from those choices became something neither of us expected." Marcus squeezed her hand gently. "Something worth defending in its own right. Something worth building a future around." They sat together watching the orbital research station take shape outside their viewport, a symbol of what became possible when different species chose cooperation over competition. In 3 weeks, they would stand before the most powerful political body in the galaxy and argue for a future based on partnership and mutual protection. But for now, they were simply two people who had found something unexpected and precious in the middle of interstellar politics, a love that had grown from duty into choice, from necessity into genuine partnership. Whatever the future held, they would face it together. And perhaps that was the most important truth of all to share with a galaxy learning to navigate new possibilities for peace. 3 weeks later, as they prepared to address the Galactic Council, Zara reflected on how far they had come from that first awkward meeting in the diplomatic suite. She had married a stranger to protect her people and discovered a partner who had changed her understanding of strength, courage, and love. The quiet man she had wed to save Elfin Prime had shown her that true power came not from technology or weapons, but from the willingness to use great strength in service of others. And in learning to love him, she had discovered that some alliances could transform into something far more valuable than anyone had dared to hope. The galaxy was about to change again, but this time they would help shape that change together, as partners in every sense that mattered. Some marriages began with love and hope for the future. Theirs had begun with duty and necessity. But what they had built together proved that the strongest bonds could grow from the most unlikely beginnings, and that love, real, lasting, transformative love, could bloom even in the space between stars. As the HSN Cerberus prepared to dock at Nexus Station, Zara stood beside Marcus watching the massive space structure that housed the Galactic Council. Soon, they would step into chambers where the future of interspecies relations would be debated and decided. But first, there was something she needed to say. "Marcus, yes. Whatever happens in there, whatever decisions are made about humanity's role in galactic affairs, I want you to know that I love you. Not because of political necessity or alliance requirements, but because of who you are." Marcus turned to her with an expression of complete happiness. "I love you too, Zara. More than I ever thought possible when this all began." They kissed then, two people from different worlds who had found something universal in each other. Around them, the ship hummed with activity as crew members prepared for what might be the most important political meeting in galactic history. Whatever came next, they would face it as partners, allies, and lovers. They had started as strangers bound by necessity and become something that would help shape the future of the galaxy. And sometimes that was how the best love stories began, not with passion but with duty, not with romance, but with respect. not with promises of forever, but with a simple commitment to be there for each other, whatever tomorrow might bring. The woman who had married a stranger to save her people had discovered something she never expected to find: a love worth fighting for, a partnership worth building on, and a future worth creating together among the stars.